G'day guys, and welcome back to an episode in our Kart Class podcast. It's been a little while since we've last recorded a podcast, so I wanted to get stuck back into it. Today we're going to be looking at how to avoid some accidents. Now, what we're finding is a lot of people go to the track, they do a lot of practicing, so a lot of testing, their speed starts to really improve. Then when they come into a race with a lot of other karts on track, they don't know what to do. So what happens is they might get nervous at the start, they might not defend in the right spots on the track, and these things are starting to lead to more accidents, whether it's turn one or later on in the race. So when it comes to trying to avoid accidents at the start of a race, depending on where you're starting, if you're starting in the mid-pack or at the back of the pack, you want to be trying to look really as far in advance as you can down to the front of the field. If you can start to see some of the karts on the front two rows, say, they're starting to potentially lock wheels, lock up the brakes, so they're losing control, a bit of a tussle or a bit of, pushing in the side or the front to back, then when it comes to you in that mid-pack or the back pack, it gives you a little bit more opportunity to start to take caution, to see where the karts might be skidding or sliding, where gaps might appear if there is some contact being made in front of you. So rather than trying to focus on the kart directly in front of you or even one row in front of that, you're trying to look 4 or 5 rows in advance if you possibly can. That's really important for our younger karts, younger drivers, because it takes them a little bit longer to process what's happening at speed. Now, if I'm driving a road car on the freeway and there's a traffic jam, you're trying to look, again, 4 or 5 cars in front. Once you can see that car starting to hit the brakes and that red light comes on, then you know the next car's going to hit the brakes, and then it's a Constantine effect. And then it brake, and it gets to you, and then you hit the brakes at the same sort of time. With our karts, we don't have that braking light, so we can't quite see as well when the kart in front of you is slowing down. That's why it's super important to keep an eye on what's happening as far in advance as you can. So again, that way we might try and minimize some of our turn one accidents. Now, another place that we can get caught up in our turn one accidents is on the outside row or on the outside of the racetrack. Now, this is probably the best spot to try and make up multiple spots at turn one. So again, if you're starting that mid or back pack, if you want to try and make up 4 or 5 positions, the outside row and the outside of the circuit allows you to brake later. And the reason for that is most karts are trying to look to squeeze down towards the inside of the track. So as those karts from the outside are trying to find little gaps or trying to make gaps towards the inside, that inside row is starting to slow down more and to filter back, where the outside starts to open up a little bit more space. And if you have the confidence, you can try and brake a little bit later than the inside row. And it's actually a grippier part of the track as well. You might be able to make up some spots there. The problem is, if we have contact of karts and the inside row is pushing a lot, then the speed of the karts as we're about to turn one, no matter, depending on the corner, if it's a hairpin or it's a fast sweeper, but the speed of the karts as they're pushing, it filters towards the outside row or the outside of the track. So if you do find that there is an accident at turn one, the karts start to spin towards the outside, and that could get into your line of path that you were driving on. So it's that risk reward of, do I need to make up 4 or 5 spots, as quickly as I can, or do I just want to try and circulate, get through turn one safe and sound, or at least with a higher percentage, and then try and pick off those 4 or 5 karts as the race goes on. It's not it always happens in this particular race because different people are starting in different spots in the race event, depending on the track conditions, whether it's wet, it's dry. But you need to try and work that out on the fly. So as the light goes out or the flag drops for the start of a race, you need to have it, again, looking up, seeing where the gaps are, seeing what the other drivers are doing, whether they're nervous, whether they're aggressive, and then try and find whether the inside or outside row is going to be best for you. That's how to try and avoid accidents in the first corner. Now, when it comes to the end of a race and trying to avoid some accidents, what we see a bit of is karts could be over-defending. So if we find that karts are defending from, say, 5 laps to go, the karts behind are going to get frustrated. And if the driver in front of you is not leaving you much room, then we tend to see a bit of pushing and shoving from the karts behind. So if we find that we're over-defending or we're starting to swerve on the track, you might see other drivers, taking it out on you. So just be mindful of, not swerving multiple times in the lead up to a corner because you can't change direction more than once. So you can choose to go to the inside, maintain that line. Don't come back outside and leave the door open for someone to try and overtake you. The other thing is the opposite of defending is literally not defending. So now the opposite end is that we're leaving the door open for more karts to have an opportunity to pass you. And we know in those last couple of laps, we don't want to give up those spots. So where we're seeing accidents happen here is we're on the racing line, someone's trying to make a bold move to overtake us. We're trying to hang on the outside now because we don't want to give up that position that we, have made our way into. So now instead of, maybe if it's early in the race, we might give a little bit of racing room, we might duck in behind that go-kart. Now we're trying to, brake later and stay on the outside. The kart that's trying to pass us is trying to squeeze us or, overtake us. So they're trying to squeeze us off to the circuit, off the edge. And now someone got contact of karts, and predominantly the outside kart tends to face a bigger consequence. So again, just be mindful of knowing to defend in the right parts of the track at the end, because that's when the elbows come out more. That's when we see a little bit more front and back or side-to-side contact being made as well. So really just try and minimize those opportunities where someone can take advantage and try and stick it up the inside if possible. So there are a few tips on how to avoid some accidents on track, whether that's the opening laps or towards the back end. Just remember, each race has to be treated differently. Even if you're racing the same competitor over and over, they might be trying something different that they haven't attempted an overtake on a certain spot on the track that you're not used to. So really just try and respect each race as if it's a new race, because like I said, we'll try and minimize the accidents. And then the more races we can finish, the better that it is for our results. But it's getting that confidence, that consistency up. So yeah, that's what I'll be trying to do to try and avoid some accidents. Hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Like I said, if you've got any queries or questions that you want to be raised on a podcast, feel free to shoot them through via info@kartclass.com, our Instagram or our Facebook pages, and I'll be happy to do a podcast and answer them for you. Hope you've enjoyed this episode of Kart Class, and be sure to check out our next episodes. Cheers.